Hello, Giants fans, and welcome to a new edition of the Valentine's Views podcast here on Big Blue View Radio. As we get closer and closer to the NFL draft, you guys that have been listening right along know that I've been trying to bring you some opinions from a variety of draft analysts. We've talked to Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl. We've talked to TJ McCrate from 33rd Team. We've talked to Nate Cooper from Sports Info Solutions. And today I have Chad Reuter of NFL.com, nationally known draft analyst, guy who does lots and lots of mock drafts for NFL.com. So, Chad, thank you very, very much for spending some time.
Yeah, no problem. And thanks for having me on. And as Rob Bass once said, I might not be internationally known, but I'm known to rock the microphone. So that's what we're going to do here today. And looking forward to it.
Cool. And, as I was listing off draft analysts, I forgot your friend and mine, Matt Waldman, and he'll be mad at me if I don't mention him. So we've had Matt on as well. So, and Matt's one guy that you and I both know. If you're going to talk to Matt, you need to chisel out a long bracket.
Yeah, and Matt doesn't get mad. So he wouldn't be mad. He'd just get even.
There you go. So we are going to do something today. I've talked to several different draft analysts, about prospects, and we wind up talking a lot about the same guys. We're going to do something a little different. Chad does so many mock drafts, 4-round mock drafts, 7-round mock drafts, and the entire NFL community gets to pick on Chad's mocks. So yes, I'm going to let Chad have a little fun today, and I'm going to let Chad pick apart the 7-round mock draft that I did on Sunday. Yeah. I've been doing those mock drafts, started with 3 rounds way back in January, and now I'm up to 7 rounds as we get closer, to the draft. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put myself on the hot seat and let Chad sort of pick apart, my mock draft. So let's get right into that. Round 1, we'll go right through round 1 to round 7. I used the NFL mock draft database simulator, which I use most of the time simply because it offers not one person's opinion of a draft board, but it offers a consensus draft board, which hopefully will be a little bit more realistic. So to get started here, what I did in round 1, pick number 25, is I actually traded down, moved down 6 spots with the Kansas City Chiefs, got back a 3rd-round pick, number 95 overall, which I think is pretty realistic value if you look at trade charts. And I ended up landing on Brian Branch, Alabama safety, with that 31st pick overall. So Chad, was I nuts to trade down there? How did I wind up doing there?
This is the worst mock draft of. No, I'm just kidding. I just feel the need to say that once in my life to somebody because I've heard it so many times.
I put myself on that hot seat.
Yeah, no, it's actually I projected the Giants to trade down. I think my last 4-round mock. I've done so many iterations of these things. I forget whether I did it or whether I did it and then changed it. But anyway, I think the Giants or the Jaguars are in the position to trade down. So I agree that this is a real possibility. And Brian Branch is an excellent player. He's a 2nd-round athlete, a 1st-round player. So we'll see which one of those, plays out in the end for teams. If he falls out of the 1st or if he doesn't. I think he's a heck of a football player. I think he'd be perfect for what they need. I think I've projected Cam Smith from South Carolina when the Giants trade down for them to take him because he's that similar player. He can play nickel and slot, and he can play all over the place. Some teams will have him as a safety. So, yep, I'm right on your thinking there, and I think the Giants would do well to. They haven't traded down for a while in the 1st, and I think it's about time that they do so.
Yeah, hopefully, Dave Gettleman did in his last draft, and it didn't work out so well for the Giants. I think Dave did it partially just to prove to the NFL world that he would do it.
Right.
And but it didn't work out really well. I supported that move. I just think the Giants picked the wrong player when they picked Kadarius Toney's.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm just curious, real quickly, before we move to 37, what is it that you like about Cam Smith? Because I did see your pick of Smith in your mock.
Well, like I said, super competitive. Has some flexibility, even though he's not the biggest guy. Well, again, like Branch, neither of them are the biggest guys, but they play tough for their size. Smith won't back down to anybody, and you could play him, like I said, outside, nickel, little safety as well. So I think he's got the same versatility Branch does. And we'll see whether Smith is considered. Again, he's in that range of late first, early second. Where are they going to go? Because once you get out of the top 20 to 22 guys, then it's a free for all for the next 30 picks. So that's the similar guys with similar thoughts.
How many guys do you have with pure first round draft grades?
I think right now I'm at 21. I don't have my list right in front of me here, but
yeah, that's just roughly.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty typical for a year. I think that's what most teams. Well, I think what most teams would have like 18 to 20, but then you accumulate them over the whole league, and it ends up being 22 to 23 players that carry that true first round grade.
Okay, so let's move to round 2. And what I did here, I made what wound up, in the comments at Big Blue View being a sort of controversial move here. I took some of my extra draft resources. Joe Shane enters the draft with 10 picks. I don't think he's going to use all 10. I think he'll move around the board. Moving down gave me 11. I moved up 20 spots to 37. Mostly, to be honest with you, mostly to get ahead of the New York Jets and because I think the Jets are in the market for center. I wanted my choice of the 2 top centers on the board here, and I went with Joe Tippmann, which I freely admit in my post that when push comes to shove, I might be riding the wrong horse in terms of which guy gets picked first. But I'm curious what you think of the pick and what you think of the idea of moving up there.
I think Tippmann is, I think, as you mentioned in your article, John Michael Schmitz would probably be the guy they trade up for. That would be my guess. And I think Tippmann, if they hang on until later in the second round, they could get Tippmann a little bit later. But if they really want the guy that they want, there's always a couple of picks in the top, 5-6 picks in the second round. So I think if the Giants want to get ahead of the Jets, they'll have to trade ahead, or they'll have to move up, and then Schmitz, I think, would be the pick. So I think the reasoning, the interesting thing is, if the Jets trade those 2 second-round picks to Green Bay for Aaron Rodgers, then the Giants may not have to move up as far, and they may be able to hang back a bit and wait for the center, like Tippmann probably, to fall into them at the end of the second round. So, I wouldn't doubt that something like this happens. My guess would be for Schmitz, but either way in the second round, they're probably looking center.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I go back and forth. I think Schmitz is the safer play, but I think I can't
Tippmann
get
could
past.
Be a very good center too. Like there's nothing wrong with either of them. I'm a Wisconsin guy, so I tend to be a little harder on the Wisconsin guys than other people do. But so I expect both guys to be longtime starting center. So I don't know that you could really go wrong either way.
All right. Round 3, I ended up with another little move up. I think I moved up 3 spots here, or actually moved down 3 spots here, and picked up another pick later in the draft. What did I pick up here? I got this. I got the 6th round. I got the, I actually ended up. So I actually moved up here 3 spots to get Dayan Henley, the linebacker from Washington State. I couldn't remember if I moved up or moved down. And
there's going to be some interest in him in the 3rd round for sure. So a team may have to move up a few spots to get him.
You like that pick there? I mean, if you look at some of the players that I left a bunch of the wide receivers, Mims and Tank Dell and Tyler Scott, and I left Jaden Reed. I left Darius Rush there as well.
Well, I'm guessing that, in my opinion, Mims, Dell, Spears, Rush, and well, maybe not Reed, but most of those guys will probably be gone by that point, is my guess. So,
Mhm.
but I think if you're looking for a linebacker in the third round, Henley is one of those guys. Owen Pepo from Auburn also. So I think one of those two guys would be their linebacker fit there. And so they're both. I don't know if Henley's the most instinctive player, but he's certainly a good chaser. And Pepo's got that athleticism as well. So I think he's in the right area of the draft, and I think it'd be a solid pick for him.
Yeah, I just didn't feel like there was another linebacker. If I waited, I didn't feel like there
Yeah,
was another comparable guy to Henley's skill set.
this is not a deep draft that linebacker either. So that's I agree that there's going to be some positioning in round three. I don't know, the Seahawks maybe get a young linebacker. Some other teams are kind of interested, and they're not going to use there's not going to be as many first and second round linebackers this year. So there's going to be some competition in the third probably.
Cool. So fourth round, I went with cornerback. We're into day 3 picks now. I went with Kai Blue Kelly, cornerback out of Stanford. I wasn't. I was looking at this board, and I wasn't thrilled with what was there.
Mm-hmm.
But I could have easily talked myself into Michael Wilson from Stanford. I could
Mm-hmm.
have talked myself into Sean Tucker, the running back from Syracuse. I could have talked myself into Ajomo, the
Mm-hmm.
defensive tackle from Texas. So I'm just curious what you think about the value here.
You don't want to see Riley Moss as the rebirth of Jason Sehorn with the Giants, huh? Well, I get it, but I think Kelly could go third round, so he may be gone by this point. But if he's available in the fourth, I think it's a solid pick. He had some issues at times this year in coverage, which caused his stock to drop a little bit. But overall, a really good player. He's just got to stay with his man. He cannot give up space to his man because he just doesn't have the recovery ability to make it up. So if you can get him in a system that allows him to focus on his guy, maybe or if you play enough zone where he could just come forward and make a stick, he's in good shape there. So I think the value in the fourth round would be very good if he's still available. And I agree that that's a position they need to work on, and that would be one of the better picks of the guys that could be available.
You like Moss too?
I think he's a good fourth, fifth round guy. I think he's a lot of teams will want to move him to safety, just like they've always wanted to do. To everybody, every team has wanted to do to Riley, but I think he can play outside, and I think he's going to be a real solid pick. Fourth, fifth round pick. That he's going to be a reserve. Maybe he works his way into a starting role, but he's going to be a guy you just don't want to cut in the end. So, and at cornerback position, there's so much attrition that you need these guys in the mid rounds to step up.
Yeah, okay. So round 5, pick number 175 as it works out with all of my moving around here. Um, Bryce Ford Wheaton, wide receiver from West Virginia, was my choice. And for me, I looked at it. I haven't picked a wide receiver yet to add to what the Giants have, and for me, I just looked at the measurables, and I looked at basically the size, speed, weight,
Yeah.
all of that, and I thought it's day 3. I'm going to take a swing at seeing if the Giants could develop this.
Yeah, and he flashes real talent, and that's the thing that's going to separate him from a lot of the receivers on day 3 is that size. And obviously the Giants have a lot of guys that are smaller receivers, and they hope Wan'Dale Robinson can come back and be an impact player, and maybe they get something out of Sterling Shepard this year. So if you want size on day 3, he's one of the guys you want to look at.
Yeah, and I think Matt Waldman, rookie scouting portfolio, in comparing Ford Wheaton to NFL players, basically looked at him and said the upside, the ceiling for him is Allen Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
And And when I look at that, I'm like, I'll take that in the fifth round.
Yeah, I mean that's an upside,
Right.
comparison, right? So like the
Right.
chances are he's not going to quite be that. But again, simply with his body, his ability, he's got to be consistent as a receiver. And some of these guys in day 3, they either figure it out or they don't. And if he can, he's going to be a real threat on the outside to smaller corners and be able to box them out, get downfield, and you just hope that you can find a Darius Slayton kind of guy that works his way, makes progress, and by year 2 or 3, you've really got something.
All right. So round 6, I went with, and I'm going to butcher the first name. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. Viliami
Fehoko.
Fihoko,
You
the
call him
edge
Junior.
from.
You can call him Junior. He goes by Junior. So
All
Fehoko,
right.
and
Fihoko.
good is a good pick here. I think he could be gone in round 4 or 5, but
Mm-hmm.
if he's a really he tested better athletically than people thought. And so I think he's a big guy. He played on the outside, even though he probably played at 275, 280 pounds. He might shed a little bit of that in the league and to play outside. But yeah, really, really solid player, base end, fourth. If you can play him as a base end 4-3, you can play him as a 5 technique because he's pretty strong. But he stood up quite a bit at San Jose too. So I think he's got enough quickness, he's got enough strength to play outside, kind of a Sam role, and provide a little bit more strength on the edge than Azeez Ojulari and some of the other guys they might have. So it's a good complementary pick as an edge for the Giants, I think.
All right. So before we move to the 7th round, something that I want to do in a lot of these mocks where I've gone 7 rounds for the Giants, I keep coming back to quarterback at this particular pick. I think that the Giants, with Daniel Jones, with Tyrod Taylor, they've got their starter, they've got their backup for 2023. I'm not trying not to read a whole heck of a lot into them visiting with Hendon Hooker. Who knows what that means.
Right.
But
look, that
I
teams
think, I
talk
think
to
they're
guys.
going.
Yeah, teams talk to guys like that during the draft process in case they become a free agent 3 years from now. So, like, you have to do your due diligence with these guys now, get a feel for them, and keep them on your board and say, hey, if this guy comes available, if Daniel Jones gets hurt, or 3 years from now it's just not working out, and this guy comes up, we want to know something about him. So,
Right.
that's all they're doing there.
Yeah, and maybe if they're looking for a trade candidate, they want to know as much as they can.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a possibility. But what I keep coming back at 209 at this spot in round 6.
Yeah.
Keep coming back to quarterback. And I keep coming back to Jake Haener from Fresno State.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just curious if you think that this, whether it's Haener or somebody else, that this sort of round 5, round 6, round 7 is a good spot to pick up a developmental quarterback.
Yeah, I think there's going to be tons of them taken, from Clayton Tune from Houston to Dorian Thompson Robinson. I mean, there's going to be a few taken, and it's interesting. It could be like last year, where if there's a run in the 5th and early 6th round, then teams will start picking them up because they'll be like, we don't want to wait until they're undrafted free agents, right? So it's really going to be interesting to see if 1 or 2 come off the board, then do another 3 come off the board, just to make sure that they get a guy in the building, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think my spoiler here, hopefully I don't have this wrong, but I think I have them taking Sean Clifford in the 7th, 6th or 7th, maybe. And I think that's the kind of guy that they're looking for, that maybe could become something with time, something like that. So
right.
I think that's what I'd be rolling with in my 7-round mock draft that comes out in a few days.
In a few days, there you go. Yeah, I was going to ask you when your next iteration is. That going to be your final one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
and it's plenty. I'm good with that being the final one.
Yeah, I've been doing these once a week just for discussion, just for weekend content. I've been doing at least 3 rounds since the end of January, and I'm mocked out, I'm scenarioed out.
Yeah,
I try to do them differently every week, just as much to provide discussion and about
that's right.
different players and different scenarios than anything else.
That's all they're for. I mean,
Hmm.
you just can't predict that far down in terms of, who's going to be picked by whom and all that. When I do them, I'm really just trying to give people a general idea of where guys could be selected, the general area in which they're going to be selected, and maybe bring up some names that they hadn't really heard of yet, and to
Hmm.
look into them and stuff like that. So that's what it's all about, and it's all for fun. It's just all puzzles. It's just a different form of puzzle than the one your grandma put on the kitchen table, years ago and started messing around with. That's all it is.
Yeah, puzzles. I love puzzles, except I
Yeah.
hate doing a 1,000 piece puzzle and realizing, you've only got 998 of the pieces.
That's right. And for mock drafts, it's more like you only need 500 pieces, but they give you 1,000 pieces, and you have to figure out which pieces out of those are going to make up the one in your 259 mock draft, or your the real draft at 259. But you've got 1,000 players to choose from. So
Have you ever bothered to count in any of your mock drafts, how many players you actually got right, at least in terms of how many of those players actually got drafted?
Yeah, it's probably you're gonna miss on 20 guys, probably 20 to 30, just because
Mhm.
there's, like I said, there's so many, and matching team and round is nearly impossible after the second round. But usually you get a couple. Like I think last year I had Marcus Jones going to the Patriots in the third round, and then I had Connor Hayward going to the Steelers in the sixth round. And in previous years, I've had like Amari Rogers going at the pick he went, but I had him going to, I think it was Tennessee instead of the Packers trading into that pick to go get him. So there's
Mhm.
funny things like that happen every year,
Sure.
but it's just part of the process, and it's fun to see how it turns out.
All right. So let me quickly summarize this. The Giants have 3 picks in the seventh round.
Yep.
And I'm going to hate Joe Shane if he doesn't get rid of a couple of these picks on the final day of the draft, because Joe needs to understand, none of us who cover this team want to work that hard on Saturday afternoon. We don't
Yeah.
want to be sitting there all day writing blurbs on seventh round draft picks. So
Well, the
Joe,
problem
come
is
on.
you got to find a team to take them, right? I mean that's the hard thing with seventh round picks. They're not valued in
Right.
much in terms of trades and all that, so you end up just having to use them, and you have to work a little less hard on the undrafted free agent list that you accumulate. So
There you go.
that's the trade off.
There you go. So my 3 seventh round picks, I'm just going to give you all three together. Jared Clark, defensive lineman from Coastal Carolina, because Joe has said again and again and again that he wants to upgrade the run defense and the defensive line depth. Grant Dubose, wide receiver out of Charlotte, because he was sitting there, and
Yep.
our friend Matt Waldman just loves this guy's upside. And the third one I picked was John Gaines, the second interior offensive lineman out of UCLA, guy that one of my draft analysts, Nick Filato, really likes as a late choice. So, did I get anything of value there in round 7?
Yeah, actually, I have all three of these guys going in the fifth or sixth round. So yeah, the value would be excellent with all these guys in the seventh round. I like Clark in the fifth. There's gonna be a lot of teams looking for that athletic big man in the fifth, early sixth round. So he's a great fit there. Gaines is a very athletic guard. So again, I think sixth round, fifth round, somebody's gonna want him, in their building. And then I forgot. Oh, Dubose is a guy that I looked at before the season as a potential top 120 pick.
Wow.
So I like him quite a bit. And I think the receiver draft's a little down this year, and there may not be as much interest in guys in the fourth, fifth round. So a guy like this could, potentially drop. But yeah, I really like him as an outside guy. He's very fluid, very reliable catcher. So, Matt and I have talked about him in the past, and I like him going early. And if they could get a couple of these guys in the seventh round, I think you should be happy to write about them, and not worry about going a little bit later on Saturday.
There you go. It's always interesting using a simulator, because you try to stick to the board as it's presented to you,
Yeah, right.
and and as I said, the NFL mock draft database simulator, at least it's not one guy's opinion.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
it's a consensus of all the mocks and all the big boards, and
Yeah.
so you have a chance of being more realistic, but still, as you said, once you get past a couple of rounds, it's
Yeah, once you get past like the top 180 players or so, it's there could be 200 guys that could easily go. So it's you're just not. It's trying to figure out who's going to be fifth, sixth, or seventh round picks is very difficult. But you picked some good players, and in the end, that's all you can really do. Guys end up being seventh round picks that we don't expect every year. So. But it's just a fun exercise, and look, if the Giants end up with the guys you picked, I think they would be very happy.
so I did okay, and
You
and
did.
and you know, I survived the hot seat, and I hope you enjoyed the opportunity to be on the judgment side of one of these mock
Absolutely.
drafts.
And the thing is I do my snap draft grades every year, and everybody
Mhm.
rips me because I don't, give F's and D's very often or whatever. But the thing is, when you study these players all year long and you really get into what teams need in the short and long term, teams generally make pretty good decisions based on their team and the value and all that. And sometimes the value isn't great, so I make a note of that. But really, for most people, I've done enough scenarios, looking through enough scenarios and thinking of that a lot of things make sense in this draft. So I don't
Mhm.
tend to be as harsh as some other people. So you picked a good guy to be your judge. Um,
All
but
right.
look, if you would have picked somebody that I thought wasn't of good value, I would say so. So yeah, I'm happy to be a good judge, and
All right.
really appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
Hey, so thank you for doing this. It was fun to sit in the hot seat and have someone judge my work. So, why don't you let folks know where they can reach you on Twitter and all that good stuff before I let you go?
Yeah, you can check out my stuff on NFL.com. Obviously, many talented writers that I'm blessed to work with: Lance Zerline, Daniel Jeremiah, Bucky Brooks, etc. Watch Path to the Draft every day if you get there, and so you can reach me on Twitter at Chad_Reuter, Reuter. This time of year, I'm more busy working than tweeting, but if everybody wants to send me a note, and if I can get a question answered, I'll do that. Again, Ed, thanks a lot for having me on.
Hey, we appreciate it very, very much. Giants fans, thank you as always for listening. Please remember to stay safe out there, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.